Welcome back everybody to another brand new video. So a couple of weeks ago here at home we had a massive storm. Gale force winds reached over 90 mile an hour and the gate on the side of my house blew inside out, bent it all, and now it won't shut. So I went to the local blacksmiths, got a load of metal to make a proper sturdy gate, but just about to start it, I've had an idea. About 5-6 years ago I restored a Mini and the guy wanted absolutely everything changing for new. Engine, subframe, brakes, steering, the lot. So I kept all the old parts and I've got pretty much a complete classic Mini sat out the back in bits. So we've got a dilemma. Do we be an adult or do we build a buggy and have some fun? You know what I'm doing. Let's get cracking. So we're going to start making the chassis for our buggy and we need a nice flat table to build it on. Now this ain't going to be a Formula 1 car, it ain't got to be exact, so £20 piece of plywood from the builder's merchant is going to be ideal. The layout for our buggy, let me pick this thing up. Ugh. So I'm going to put the engine in the back. Best thing about a classic Mini is inside that subframe you've got engine, gearbox, drive, suspension, cooling. It's all going to be packed in there nice. Then managed to rob a seat at my Corrado. I reckon seat there, steering about there maybe, probably a bit closer with all the suspension. Then hopefully that is about the right length. Let's have a seat. Yeah, there we go, pedals there, steering rack in front. Going to be an awesome buggy. Let's get cracking on the chassis. So after a whole morning of calculations, I've managed to draw out the shape of our lower frame. Then I've cut all the 1.5 by 1.5 box section out and laid it on the template ready for welding. Now 1.5 box section is probably over the top, but my son, he's 14, I'm going to try and get him to learn clutch control and drive this about, and he is absolutely nuts at driving. He's got a buggy already, he's rolled it like 50 times, ripped all the wheels off and everything, so need it to be super strong. If he rolls it, he's going to be all right. The subframe is going to bolt to this piece here. I've worked out how high it is, so once I've welded it up, we'll make the top frame pretty much exactly the same. Let's crack on. And there is our top and bottom frame all welded up nicely. So when I made the bottom frame, you can see this middle brace here, that's where the steering racks go in. And then when I put the top frame together, I've moved that middle brace backwards because hopefully if I've worked it out right, we're going to bolt the pedal box to that. That will give us enough room so the brake pedal, throttle pedal doesn't hit the rack. Well, hopefully anyway. Next then, let's get our height. I know from where the subframe bolts to the strut towers is 10.25 inches gap. So we'll make our 6 uprights and see you in a sec. So with the 6 uprights on, I put the top frame on, everything's looking mint. Then coming round to the back, I'm going to drill 2 10mm holes in this rear lower panel. They're 26 inches apart. That's where our front subframe is going to bolt to. Now this subframe is super heavy, awkward to lift, so it's a right pain to line up and get on there. But with a bit of struggling, it's on there. I've had to put a brace just across the front just to hold it down to the bench so it don't fall off backwards, but it's starting to kind of look like a buggy, isn't it? The only thing I'll say is this middle upright up here, it has to be from the back of this rack bar to the front of that upright 6.5 inches. I've hopefully worked that out right, and that's where our suspension arm, the upper one, is going to bolt onto, so fingers crossed about that one. Anyway, back to the subframe mounting. If you remember, we did this lower and upper frame to 35.5 inches wide to the outside of that bar. So we're going to have to cut the same size bar here to go at the back, and then just 2 more bars going forwards. They're both 18.5 inches long, and that's going to weld to our top frame. Now I've braced it all up, put extra bars over the top and clamped them on so we can keep it dead straight and dead square while we're welding this up. And then that's the main part of the chassis finished. Ideal. I've ground it all off on the sides and stuff because I don't know if I'm going to stick paneling down, you know, so I don't want any welds there. Fixing the subframe up at the back, I've got 2" by 2" angle iron, which is 6mm thick, and basically I've cut the back off that just so it's a flat piece, and then bored a 30mm hole in the middle of that, and that's just going to slip over that subframe piece there. Got it upside down. There we go. And I'm just going to weld it to the underside of the chassis. And that's our subframe done. Easy as that. Love mini subframes. Everything's just built into it. Right, I'll get that done and then we'll make a start on the front end. Sound. First thing I'm going to tackle on the front is the steering. There is our classic mini steering rack, which is in need of a desperate clean. So these were held on, awesome engineering. See that groove in there? This, that's right, it's a U-bolt, goes in there, and that was through the body, and that's how they were held in, one either side. So fitting them to our buggy is going to be a piece of cake. Again, I've got our 2" by 2" angle iron, cut it in half, 5 inches long, and I've drilled 2 8mm holes in it, just so our U-bolts can go in like that. Basically, I'm going to build it up. I've measured the centre of the steering rack. I always put centre marks on any of the bars that I make and line it up with the table. So we'll offer it all up, tack it on, hopefully take about 5 minutes. See you in a sec. And that's it, welded in. Easy as that. I spaced it up 15mm, just used 2 17mm headed bolts, clamped it in place, job's a good one. Best thing about these U-bolts is you can leave them loose until you've done the column, and the rack is actually adjustable up or down, so we can get the correct angle. I'll probably put one UJ here, one up in the middle, and that will connect to our cut down mini steering column. But yeah, easy as that. Right, let's get on with the front suspension. So on the front suspension, we're going to start off with the lower arms first. So that means spinning our chassis the other way round. The bolt we're going to use for this lower arm is a 1/2 inch diameter and it's 3.5 inches long. Also, we're going to need a spacer. Now I've found one that's inch wide by 1/2 inch deep, but you can always stack washers easy enough. Now to secure it, I've cut 2 1.5 inch wide brackets from our 2 inch angle iron. Through the one, we're going to fire a 13mm hole, and through the other, we're going to fire through our inch diameter hole. Now with the chassis, remember we had that 6.5 inches from the back of that rack to the upright. We're going to measure 1/2 inch forwards and place our first angle iron, the one with a 13mm hole. Then we're going to measure 1 3/4 inches and place our other bracket, the one with a bigger hole, and tack both of those in place. For the fixing at the front, we're going to cut 1 1/4 inch wide angle iron and then fire another 13mm hole through the middle. Then we're fitting our angle iron piece to the front tie bar. We're going to offer our arm up in place, sliding the bolt through and putting that washer on, and it's going to sit nice at the front. Now with that pinch bolt done up, I'm going to tack it on. And there we go. It's still only tacked on, but it moves, which is a good start. Now having that bigger hole there, it squashes the bush enough for it to still move, and the arm can't come forwards because of this tie bar is fixing it. So it's just an easy way of using our mini inner bushes. That works mint. I'm going to do the same the other side, and then we're starting on the top arms. Let's go. So to make a start on our upper suspension arm, we need to flip the chassis round the right way up. Then we're going to cut 1 1/4 inch section of our 2x2 angle iron and fire a 13mm hole through the middle of it. Going over to the chassis, we can see our centre upright. I've marked it where it meets the lower frame, and we need to do a measure 2 inches above that. Then with our freshly made bracket, we're going to offer it up above that line, making sure the back end of it is dead level with our upright, and then tack it on. We're going to cut 4.5 inches of our angle iron and slice it down the middle. With one section of it, we're going to put it on the bench, and we're going to take the big washer off our mini upper arm and draw out the holes we got to drill. So the 2 outer holes are 9mm and the centre hole is 1 1/4 inch. Pretty much the same way we did the bottom arm. That's right, I'm so professional here at Odd Autos, I use metric and imperial at the same time. Subscribe. I've cut a length to 85mm of our 1.5" box and put it on a flat surface. With our plate we just made, we can offer it up, and it's got to be welded on perfectly at 90 degrees. If you're doing the left hand side one, it's got to go the other way, remember. So we're doing the right, it's back that way. I'm just going to cramp it up, and that will give us a perfect 90-degree angle, and weld both of those together. Well, that was a bit of a mouthful so far explaining the front suspension, but it is out, that's hot still. It is quite hard to work out. Now this piece is going to go half on and half off this chassis rail. So what we'll do is end up cutting down a piece of the angle iron and putting it underneath and welding it to it just to make it super strong. So next we've got to build up our suspension arm. So that all goes together nice. We're basically using the standard bolt, and it works out the same as the lower arm, where that big washer slides into that hole. And then we've got two 13mm bolts bolting it up. And with that welded on, looking good. That's our top arm fitted, moves up and down nice and freely, ideal. Right, the next bit is what might change at the end of the video. It's the first time I've built this buggy. I'm kind of doing it as I go along. Now this on a Mini is the spring, so it doesn't have a metal spring, it's a rubber one made by Dunlop, you can see there. Now these are mega hard. Minis are well known to be bone shakers. I can't even push that, but the problem we got is that in a front subframe, this holds up the engine and gearbox, you know, it's all in one on a Mini. It's very heavy. We haven't got that. The most we're going to have in here is the fuel tank. That's why I've left this big gap at the front, because I want to put the fuel tank as far away from any of the hot stuff as I can. So there's no weight really in the front of ours. Mounting this, I have got a 4.5 inch cut of our angle iron, and I've done that to it. I've cut the shape so it fits inside that rubber donut there. It might change, we don't know yet. I can't weld it to that donut because we've got to take this off. So that goes in there, it goes in our top arm, goes up against our upper chassis rail. The distance I'm going to do, let me mark it, is 10mm. So we'll put that on. There we go. With the donut in the arm, I'm going to drop that down so it goes on that line, and there we go. If I find out that the suspension is too soft, I'll go lower. If it's too hard, I'll lift it up, and then that will give us a bit more play on our arm. If I don't mention it at the end of the video, 10mm is perfect. It's worked. None of the suspension fell off when I was doing jumps and going through ditches and stuff. But yeah, if I do mention it, this is the number that I'll change, just that distance there. Right, I think I'll weld that on, get all the other suspension on, and I'll see you in a minute. And that's it, all the welding's done. We now have Mini steering and suspension on the front of our little buggy. I've lifted it up off the piece of wood because we don't need that anymore. The chassis is done, and fitted the rear subframe and all the hubs. I've also fitted the shock absorbers. As you can see, the ones that I had out the back have rusted badly, so I'm gonna have to buy some new ones. At the top where they bolt on, all I've done is got a 4 inch wide piece of our angle iron, and I've left 1.25 inches and then cut the rest off and just welded it on. I'll also probably, you know, round off these edges and shape them up and make them look a bit nicer. So going on to the back, you can see here we've got these hubs, and obviously they were off the front. So to combat that, I've bought some parts. If you search low cost on eBay, loads of bits come up. These are all only a couple of £1 each. I've got a C-clamp that we can weld to the back of the subframe. We got some bushes, they were like £1.50. They fit inside this bush tube. And then I've got a piece of roll cage there that I'm going to weld that to. And then we've got a bolt that will fit in our track rod end, and with all those welded together, and then we're left with that, which is mega sturdy, which it needs to be, because you don't want the rear wheels going like this when you're driving. So it's easy to fit. I'm just going to offer this C-clamp up to the rear subframe, put a bolt through the middle, and that will hold it in place while I weld it. And then we take our super shiny arm, place it in, put the bolt in, and there we go. It is adjustable still, which we'll have to adjust looking at that, but it's just the job, works well. So really down to measurements wise, I've already told you what you need to know. The rest of the parts that are fitted to this, so say once you've welded your pedal box on this brace bar here, then dependent on how tall or short you are, you know where to mount your seat rails so you reach the pedals nice. Same with the steering. If you're skinny or more cuddly, you know, you'll weld it higher up or lower down. The steering is 9/16 and it's a 36 spline joint that you have to buy. There it is. Car Builder Solutions, they're a couple of quid, just get 2 of those. Overall, it's a cheap buggy. I've spent £80 on metal so far, a couple of quid on the steering bits, and you can pick up kit car seats for like 50 quid, fiberglass ones. And all the suspension arms now you can get aftermarket if you want to get the spangly adjustable ones. And with the drum brakes, everybody takes them off and fits discs, so it's a real cheap fun buggy. So I'm going to carry on with this now, and we'll go straight to the finish, and I'll show you what, if you build one, it could look like. Let's go. So leading up to the finish, I took our chassis and I spent another £60 on roll cage tube, made a cage for it and painted it in the brightest colour possible. After that, I cleaned up our 1 litre engine and painted it red. I know it's not a 1300. And I fitted it along with our cleaned up subframe to our buggy chassis. I have added electronic ignition dizzy on this because it's going to get wet. I don't want this thing breaking down. Then welded to the back of that subframe, I've added a hoop to give it some rear protection and got a standard rear box off a Mini 1 litre. Made a little exhaust, it looks mint. Then going around the front, I've cleaned up our suspension so it looks like brand new. I've had to buy new shock absorbers, remember they were all rusty, and the front tie bars. The old one you can see here was just bent beyond belief. Somebody's obviously jacked it up on it. So some nice upgraded sturdy ones, does the job mint. Steering wise, you can see at the top here, I cut our mini steering column in half, inner and outer, just welded it to a hoop. I've used 2 of the UJs from CBS and also an intermediate 400mm shaft. Then with a removable steering wheel that I bought for £20, steering looks mint. Fuel system wise, I got a tank off eBay for £50, cheap as chips. That goes in the space at the front, lovely. Then on Facebook Marketplace, I found some old rally tyres for 50 quid. They are pretty worn on the inside edge, but for just bombing around a field, they're gonna be ideal. And then lastly, I went to my mate that owns a sign place. He gave me some offcuts of 4mm thick aluminium and plastic, which I've painted black. And then our buggy's all finished. Have a look at that. Doesn't it look mint? I'll tell you what, you know, now I'm working in the day, I'm just tinkering at home in the garage after work. Over the last 4 weeks building this thing and some other contraptions, I've had some proper fun. I used to do it all the time, that's why it was called Odd Autos, weird and wacky stuff, but yeah, really enjoyed this. The suspension, remember that 10mm measurement we did? I think that's perfect, to be honest. If you get a side view, it looks dead level, and then if I get on the front, yeah, that suspension is nice and soft. I think that's going to be perfect. The other thing, when I was building it, you notice I left these 2 bits longer here. You don't have to do that if you're building one of these. I only did it so I can stand here when my son's learning and I'm close to the ignition switch, so I can just flick it off if something goes wrong. The only other thing, the brake pedal box, I had to space it up 2 inches because that bar ended up, the pedals were too close to the floor. So yeah, if you're building one of these, lift that up and it'll be perfect. The only gutting thing now is, this is as clean as it's ever going to be, because in about 10 minutes when we're ripping around the field, it's definitely not going to look like this. Right, let's go and give it a proper road test. Woo. Let's pull over for a minute. Oh, I tell you what, this is ace fun. I'm knackered now. Suspension, ace. Brakes, ace. You know, drum brakes all round. We're only doing 30 mile an hour. It feels like a million miles an hour, to be honest. Steering is real good over the bumps. It don't push on. You can do burnouts, even though it's a standard 1 litre engine, still with a 4-speed standard box with no limited slip diff. These 50 quid Facebook tyres, oh, ideal. They've got loads of grip. They must be good when they're rallying. But I'm lucky. My son lives with his mum on a farm, so they've got this massive open field to teach him to drive in. It is the world's most bumpiest field. So I did have my 360 cam going for a while, but I was trying to hold it still at one point. It's that bumpy on here. But even though it is that bumpy, this buggy just handles it well. He's gonna absolutely love driving this. And the thing is, you know, going through the prices again, 80 quid, the angle iron and the box, another 60 quid for the cage material. You can, this seat's expensive, but you can get one for 50 quid on Facebook Marketplace is going to be your friend on this, because a lot of the parts that fit to this buggy is all the stuff that people take off and get rid of. And Facebook Marketplace, it's free to list it, so you find loads of old junk on there, which is basically what this buggy is made out of. Even though it looks a couple of grand's worth, you can easily build this for under 500 quid. I've even found 1 litre engines for 100 quid, so it's easily done. Man, this thing is ace. Right, I'm going to do a couple more donuts before the ex-wife starts shouting at me and telling her to not rip up her field. And then there's an awesome jump as you leave through the gate. So I'll try and do it, and I'll try and not crash into her house. Let's go. Woohoo! Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Oh, yeah, brilliant, wicked fun. Another thing I forgot to mention is you can buy direct fit front subframes that hold a Yamaha R1 bike engine. So imagine this with like 200 horsepower. Oh, that would be ace fun. I could always build one of those, you know. Leave it in the comments if you want to see a bit more in depth of how one of these is built, you know, with a bike engine. You could even buy a disc conversion for the front and fit discs all round. Coilover suspension, it's limitless really, because you can get so much for a classic Mini. As always with my videos, there's no pesky adverts during the video, so hopefully that deserves a like and comment, and it's free to subscribe. Loads of fun. I've enjoyed this video. Back to it with a bang. I'll see you on the next one. Ta-da.